Rory, if we could turn to you, you have a very personal connection to health and safety on set after the death of your father. Could you possibly tell us what happened and how he was failed by the system?
Yes, it was 32 years ago now. It was 1988, and he was filming a film called The Return of the Musketeers, which was a follow-up to two films in the 70s, which had been hugely successful, the 3 and 4 Musketeers, both directed by Richard Lester, who was directing The Return of the Musketeers as well. And the actors had come in to be working in the afternoon, whilst during the morning there was going to be a sort of a long shot of the 4 Musketeers and my dad riding across this bridge in Toledo. And the actors sort of were all chatting and getting into their costumes when they were told, actually, we're going to get you to do an earlier shot. And what had transpired is that the stuntmen had seen the shot as it was set up and what they were required to do. And the bridge in Toledo was a cobbled bridge, and they'd said, the cobbles would be too dangerous for a horse's hooves. We're not going to do it. And so they'd been able to say no. The director was so sort of annoyed at the prospect of losing half a day's filming and losing that shot in particular, that he said, well, fine, let's just get the actors to do it instead if the stuntmen are going to make a fuss. And quite a lot of the other actors were quite experienced horsemen. My dad was not at all, but not wanting to make a fuss and being a biddable kind of guy, got on the horse and as they rounded the corner at the end of the bridge, his horse's hoof slipped, as the stuntman had predicted, and he'd fallen off the horse and broken his pelvis. He was then taken to a sort of a local clinic rather than a hospital with any kind of emergency treatment. And over the next 24 hours, he slowly bled to death. The reason I got involved with Andra and Kirk and Mark is the realization that 32 years later, people were still saying yes when what they meant was no. For me, obviously the pain of having to repeat one story continually and on set as often as I do is no pleasure to me, but I feel it's a burden that I wear quite willingly to educate people, and particularly younger actors coming in, about the ability to say no. And I think any kind of health and safety initiative that we have has to lead with that, is that you can say no. And even when you're feeling maybe, that still means no. It's been interesting to see over the last couple of years the seismic shift when it comes to behavior around sex and around intimacy on sets. And within a couple of years, to be standardized as quickly as it has been and mandatory, that there are intimacy coordinators for when people either have to be have scenes of a sexual nature or between adults and young kids, or whatever it is. That has come on within 2 years. 32 years after my dad dies, or 29 years later, Mark is killed in an accident of a similar nature, and also from a similar man, a man hugely loved, hugely popular, and one of those people that you would be the first to stick your hand up for and say, if Mark doesn't feel comfortable or if Roy doesn't feel comfortable, we shouldn't do this. And neither of those times did it happen. It's interesting that both also happened abroad, and that sense that no matter the fact that these are usually American or British-led productions, they are made in another country, either for locations and for the look of the show, but also quite often from cost. I made a show set in Nottinghamshire that we filmed in South Africa and Namibia just because it was cheaper. And despite all the legislation that we have in our own country, that seems to a certain extent evaporate when we're filming abroad. And no matter the fact, as an actor, I don't really know the laws around what is permissible in my own country. I certainly don't know it if I go to South Africa or to Lithuania or to wherever it is. And these offshoot companies are made within those foreign companies for this particular film or this particular project, and they get governed by the laws of that country. Now, it is one of the greatest things about our job is that we are able to travel as much as we do, work with different communities, work and discover new working practices from going abroad. But in terms of how you feel within those countries, and the times where I've felt most in danger, and admittedly can come from the fact that you feel less secure generally, but the times where I've either ended up in hospital or been asked to do things that I haven't, have all occurred in other countries. And I think that's also part of what Kirk and Andra are trying to do with the Mark Milsome Foundation, is to make sure that these principles and these regulations don't just cover us when we're working, within the M25 or in Manchester, wherever it is, that these are principles that are rolled out globally, because our industry is a global one and an international one. And for all the positives of that, there are also concerns.
Yeah. Could you talk about this power imbalance that you touched on? Because I think it'd be really interesting to kind of unpick why it is that some people, actors or crew, don't feel up to, saying, actually, I feel quite uncomfortable about doing this in this way.
Yeah, I mean, it's freelance life, and freelance is fragile. The whole business is predicated on people coming together. And it relies on a togetherness. Now, that increases, in fact, when you're away from home and abroad. But there's still, no matter what you're doing, the sense that we will not be able to do it unless we all work together. Now, unfortunately, that seems to have developed in a way that if you put your hand up and say, I don't feel comfortable, in the back of your mind, you're not joining in that togetherness. Whereas actually what we sort of need societally to change, and I mean the society of film sets, is that if someone puts their hand up and says, I don't feel comfortable, the togetherness is people coming around them and saying, we've got your back. We're here for you as well. And I feel like, as it is currently, no one wants to make a fuss, as Kirk said, because you're worried that you won't be asked again. Even those people, at the top of the cast list, or even like DOPs who've worked for 30, 40 years, occasionally find themselves in positions where saying, and I've heard them say, phew, we got away with that. Whereas, as I was talking about with the intimacy issues, there is now a sort of a standardized yes means yes, no means no, and maybe means no. That sort of has to come into health and safety and the way that we work as well. And the knowledge, and I wish this could in some way become more emblematic of the whole thing, is that there is always another shot. That saying no to a director or artist or somebody is not actually a limiter on their artistic capabilities or vision. It can often be an enabler of further and sometimes more rewarding ones. And yes, we are all there because we believe in what we do, and we believe it's important, and we believe that if we can make it the best it can be, it can impact people's lives and it can have a lasting effect. But equally, the lasting effect of my dad dying is hugely outweighs the lasting impact of even the best film there's ever been.
Yeah. After his death, there was a sense that things might change. There was this kind of willingness to review health and safety. Have you seen any evidence that has kind of happened over the decades since?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I was 10 when he died, so my knowledge of what the film industry was then is obviously very limited. I do know the very first job I had, which was filming out in Morocco, day 3, and this, as a 22 or 3-year-old, somebody says, actually, it'd be great if you could get on this horse and ride up this hill. Now, there's a hugely positive and emboldening force that grief has for me to be able to say in my first job, I'm not doing that. And if you want to push me as to why I'm not doing that, I've got a terrific get out of jail card, and I have not been scared to use that for the rest of my career, and indeed to give that card to other actors I'm working with. And I know a lot of actors from older than me do sort of use my dad's death as a reason for something not to happen on set. But at the same time, as much as this story might be well known to a lot of older people, there is still a new generation coming through who don't know it. And obviously to have to keep repeating it, and to now in some ways have to join forces with the Mark Milsome Foundation to say it didn't stop then, we haven't made enough gains in our understanding. To continue to have to do that is obviously, it's exhausting and saddening to realize that so little has changed. But I don't want to be on a set where somebody not just dies, somebody has a serious accident, and I will feel the guilt because I didn't say my story.